After nearly a decade of teaching insurance courses and watching students take these exams, I've noticed something. The students who score highest aren't always the ones who know the most. They're the ones who know how to work the test. Today, I'm sharing the 3 most powerful test-taking strategies I've discovered. Tip number 1. Usually a multiple choice question will have 2 obviously incorrect answers and 2 that both could be correct and requires some nuance to differentiate. If you can eliminate the 2 incorrect answers, you increase your probability of getting it right from 25% to 50%, even if you don't know the answer. Here's an example to demonstrate this technique. Your insureds occupy a single-family detached dwelling. For economic reasons, they are considering renting the finished basement to a tenant. What effect will this have on their homeowner's policy? A. None at all. Renting part of a dwelling is not considered a commercial activity. B. They will have to install a smoke detector in the basement, and the policy will then be in full force. C. The policy will have to be cancelled and reissued on a secondary dwelling form. D. The policy must be endorsed to declare it is no longer a single-family, owner-occupied dwelling. So if you look at this question, you'll see that C is clearly incorrect. Secondary dwelling insurance is for vacation properties like cottages, and this is an owner-occupied dwelling with a rental. B is also likely incorrect because there's no logical reason why that would be the only required change. If you must install a smoke detector, there will likely be other changes as well, such as declaring the new occupancy to the insurer. Now you are left with just A and D, which may both be correct. Even if you don't know the answer, you have a 50-50 chance. You can use further deduction here and guess that it is more likely an endorsement would be required rather than doing nothing. And indeed, in this case, the answer is D. As you can see, even if you don't 100% know the answer with certainty, you can play a deduction and probability game to get the answer that is most likely to be correct. Tip number 2. Clarify and rewrite the question. Often they will throw in context in the question that isn't totally relevant. By striking out the irrelevant information, you can eliminate confusion and get more clear on the actual meat of the question. Here's an example to demonstrate. Determining whether a risk meets the criteria for insurance, the underwriter must assess the hazards that could cause a peril to occur. When checking into an applicant's prior claims history or financial condition, the underwriter is concerned about the existence of A. Other parties with an insurable interest. B. Physical hazards. C. A moral hazard. D. Flammable material on the premises. So when you read this question carefully, what are they really asking you? They want to know what the claims history or financial condition tells you about the risk. The whole first sentence, determining whether a risk meets the criteria for insurance, the underwriter must assess the hazards that could cause a peril to occur, is just filler and isn't directly relevant to the question. If you were to eliminate that sentence, that wouldn't affect the actual meaning of the question. By striking that out, you free up mental space to tackle the actual question itself. So really the question is, what does the applicant's claims history and financial condition tell you about the risk? Let's apply tip number 1 to eliminate the 2 answers most likely to be incorrect. In this case, B and D are most likely to be incorrect because looking at the financial condition and claims history doesn't tell you about physical hazards or flammable materials on the premises. Also, those 2 are essentially the same answer. How we're left with A, other parties with an insurable interest, and C, a moral hazard. In this case, the correct answer is C. Poor financial condition or a history of suspicious losses could indicate a moral hazard with the applicant. Tip number 3 is to try to answer the question without looking at the answers. Although we have this as tip number 3, it should be the first thing that you try. This is because sometimes the answers are there to confuse you and draw you away from the correct answer. Trust your gut. You've invested the time studying, and you likely know more than you think. Let's use another example to show you what I mean. An underwriter is required to perform many tasks. However, the main function of an underwriter is to A. Select the risks that are most likely to be profitable to the insurer. B. Bind coverage on all risks the insurer accepts. C. Set the premium rates mostly for commercial risks. D. Process cancellation certificates and issue premium refund checks. Try to cover the options with your hand or a piece of paper. Read the question and note down your gut answer before looking at the options. If your instinct matches an option exactly, that's usually the correct one. If you've studied, you'll likely know the answer is risk selection or option A. This is the correct option. However, we can also use tip number 1 to further clarify our answer. C and D are most likely to be incorrect. C because it refers to commercial risks, but we know there are personal lines and many types of underwriters. D as well because those are admin tasks and can hardly be considered the main function of an underwriter. So that leaves us with A and B. Between the two, A would be most correct because you don't always want to take every single risk that's presented to you, which B would imply. Now you have 3 reliable tools in your test-taking toolkit: strategic elimination, cutting through the fluff to find the real question, and trusting your finely tuned instincts. You've already done the studying. Now you have the tactical edge to maximize your performance. Walk into that exam room knowing you're fully prepared, not just with knowledge, but with strategy. You've got this.